At a Royal Air Force base in Scotland, preparations begin for an emergency. A transatlantic flight has been hijacked. Colonel Dumont is called in to take command. He arrives with a stern, focused look. An officer briefs him that the pilot and co-pilot are likely dead and that a passenger on board is flagged on Germany's terrorist watch list. The team makes contact with the aircraft and orders it to land. Dumont calls for a closer look and attempts to reach the crew. Suddenly, movement is spotted by one of the doors. A parachute drops and a young boy appears. 2 RAF trucks rush over to collect him. It becomes immediately clear this is a major terror situation. Dumont notices an unfamiliar figure in the cockpit. He radios a warning that any sudden actions will be met with gunfire. He commands the man to remain seated and raise his hands. The stranger insists he isn't a terrorist and pleads for a chance to explain. Later, a translator is brought to speak with the boy, Elias, but he is too shaken to answer. The story flashes back to the day before. In a hotel room, Elias's mother, Nadia, gets ready for her flight. She calls her doctor in New York to discuss a strange illness she is battling. Soon after, Elias calls to say he has already checked in their luggage. That night at the airport, Nadia meets him. They pass through security and wait at the gate. Nadia steps away to the restroom, where she prepares her medicine. Back in the lounge, Elias chats with a man named Ferd, who asks where his mother is. Nadia returns shortly after, and together they board the plane. A flight attendant offers coffee to the pilots before turning to the crew area, asking a colleague named Ebal to handle a difficult first-class passenger. The flight takes off from Germany, headed for the United States. Later, Nadia comes back from the restroom, writes in her journal, and finds a picture of herself with her husband. A memory surfaces of when their car broke down in a remote spot. Her husband went for help, leaving her alone with the baby. She wandered into an abandoned house, followed a trail of blood into the basement, found her husband dead, and was bitten by a vampire just before sunrise. Back on the plane, tension rises in the front cabin. Ball tries to manage a passenger, but the scene escalates. A Sky Marshal steps in. Ball pulls a knife, killing the second marshal, while another hijacker disables the first. Ball then sends Curtis to track down the third marshal. Curtis comes back carrying a gun, and Ball executes the final marshal in front of Carl, another hijacker who looks unsettled. Meanwhile, Nadia senses danger. Ball brandishes a gun and forces the passengers to the rear. Berg, another hijacker, enters the cockpit, talks with co-pilot Bastian, and throws the pilot's body out of the aircraft. He declares control over the plane and orders passengers to stay still with hands on the seats. Yuri, another member of the group, tampers with the flight recorder and tells Berg the co-pilot changed the course. Elias, worried about Nadia, studies the layout of the aircraft, trying to help her avoid exposure to sunlight. Curtis drags Fair to the front while Carl tries to steady Ball. Elias slips from his seat. Nadia follows, but is shot by Ball in front of her son. Ball then seizes Elias as a hostage. Carl warns him to stay calm. Berg and Curtis argue over the disorder. Berg scolds Ball for going rogue and uses Nadia's shooting to frighten the passengers into obedience. Meanwhile, Nadia awakens in the cargo hold. Hearing dogs barking, she crawls through a hatch. At the same time, Berg forces Ferd and 2 others to record a staged terrorism video. Nadia hides beneath a vehicle. Curtis and Yuri arrive to collect bomb supplies, and Yuri discovers her. Nadia kills him and feeds on a dog. Later, Ferd returns to sit near Elias. Nadia, fully transformed, tries to inject herself with medicine, but overhears the hijackers mention a countdown. She consumes Yuri's blood to recover strength and makes her way toward the cockpit. The hijackers threaten the passengers with a false warning about releasing gas if they resist. They later find Yuri's body near the dead dog, Nadia's decoy, meant to distract them. Soon, Nadia reaches the rear cabin. The passengers panic, rushing forward toward the cockpit, only to realize the pilots are gone. Nadia begs if anyone knows how to fly the plane. A man steps up and she guides him to the controls. Ferd stays behind to explain what the hijackers are really planning. The hijackers suit up in diving gear to jump out with parachutes. The new pilot tells Nadia the autopilot is still on. Watching through the security cameras, Nadia orders him not to change course until they've jumped. But Ball realizes she's still alive, brings Berg back, and demands to know the location of passenger. One hijacker strikes Nadia as they pound on the cockpit door. Nadia tells the pilot to turn the plane around. Berg notices the change, loses his temper, kills a passenger, and threatens to kill more unless the door opens. Ball drags a young girl to the front, shows her to Nadia, and starts counting down to shoot her. Nadia bursts into the cockpit, bites into Berg's neck, and chaos breaks loose. The pilot seals the door behind her. She kills Berg and goes after the others, but Berg starts turning into a vampire. Nadia senses it, returns, and stabs him to death. Ball watches as she heads back to the cockpit and tells Elias to stay inside. She then locks herself in the restroom, realizing her own change is spreading. Ball searches through her bag, finds her notebook, and reads it. He tells the group she's a vampire and shines a UV light on her, burning her skin. Memories flood her mind, struggling to raise baby Elias while needing blood. She remembers a night when Elias wouldn't stop crying. Frustrated, she growled but hid her fangs to protect him. Later, she returned to where she was first turned and met the father of the vampire who attacked her. He admitted his son couldn't control himself, and believing vampires only cause pain, he shot Nadia. On the plane, Ball starts carving a wooden stake. Elias sneaks out of the cockpit, finds his mother in the lavatory, and tries to help her. The hijackers return, and the pilot locks himself away again. Nadia confronts Ball, but he burns her with a UV light. She collapses. Ball draws her blood into a syringe, preparing to inject himself. Just then, Elias points a gun at him. Ball charges, and the gun goes off, blowing out a window. Bastion warns they have only 10 minutes of oxygen left. Nadia straps a mask onto Elias, takes the gun, and shoots Ball, though he escapes. In the cockpit, the pilot faints from lack of air. Nadia gives Elias to Ferd, asking him to keep the boys safe. Suddenly, the plane tilts into a dive. Nadia chases after Ball and finds him inside an armored car. She shoots, but it has no effect. Ball injects himself with her blood and starts turning. Knowing he'll become unstoppable, Nadia grabs alcohol and matches, pours fuel into the car, and sets him on fire, watching him burn. She recalls the old vampire's words that their kind must never spread. As smoke rises, the hijackers notice. Nadia puts out the flames and heads back. The hijackers open fire as passengers panic and rush forward. Ferd escapes with Elias. They discover Ball fully transformed and terrifying. He bites Curtis, infecting and turning him. Nadia seals the cargo hold. Elias yells that the passengers want to hurt her, but Ferd assures him otherwise. Still, a shot is fired. Nadia defends herself and tries to get away. Elias begs her not to harm Ferd. Hearing vampires trying to escape, she races back and locks Ball behind a door. Ferd tries to help, but he gets bitten. Another man shoots Ball to stop the infection. Nadia cuts into Ferd's hand to free him. Curtis climbs back onto the plane. Nadia fights him and Ball, saving a flight attendant, then rejoins the passengers. Ferd explains to them that Nadia is helping now. Together, they move toward the cockpit. The fuel is almost gone, and they must land soon. Elias and Ferd convince Nadia to hide in a dark space below the cockpit. Bastion stays with them. The pilot finally radios a British air base, reporting the hijacking, but saying the hijackers are locked in the hold. Soon after, Elias searches Nadia's medicine, while the others hear the vampires growling. A wounded man believes being bitten will save him and frees Ball. Ball immediately kills him and attacks the group. Nadia and Ferd realize the situation is collapsing. People rush at the cockpit, trying to force it open, but Bastion holds the door shut. Nadia knows if the plane lands, the vampires will escape. Ferd suggests landing first and then detonating the plane remotely. They head toward the fuel tank to set the explosives, but realize there's no timer. Nadia chooses to stay behind to destroy the plane. Once the others leave, she tells Elias someone else must arm it. She then runs into the hold with a UV light for protection, searching the hijackers for the missing timer while being chased by vampires. She makes it back, but is attacked, causing her to drop the UV light. Nadia notices her son is in danger and asks Bastion if the plane is still on autopilot and if the airbase can land it. After hearing yes to both, she asks Ferd to swear he'll protect Elias, knowing she won't survive. She then sinks her fangs in a Bastion and fully accepts her vampire side. At that moment, Ball attacks Elias. Nadia arrives to fight him, but he bites her. Thinking quickly, Elias opens the cargo hatch. Nadia takes the chance and pushes Ball out of the plane. As the hatch opens, Ferd tilts the aircraft, letting sunlight pour in and burn Ball to death. Elias gives his mother a little of his own blood. She wakes, nearly losing control, but forces herself to stop, pushes him aside, and heads back to the hold. Later at the RAF base, Elias asks a translator to help Ferd, but she refuses. Elias explains they must save him before sunset or the vampires will attack the soldiers. They sedate Ferd and lift him onto a stretcher. Colonel Dumont and his men choose to wait while the vampires feed on the dead. Ferd begs them to believe him, but they ignore his warnings and eventually shoot him, dragging him off the aircraft. Meanwhile, Elias is placed in an ambulance. He secretly drugs the paramedic, grabs his teddy bear, and sneaks back to the plane. Inside, soldiers are being ambushed by vampires. Ferd spots Elias nearby, but can't reach him. Without realizing, Elias watches his mother feeding on a soldier. He calls her name, but seeing she is no longer the mother he remembers, he makes a painful choice. He activates the explosives, destroying the plane. Colonel Dumont and his men watch in disbelief as the aircraft goes up in flames. Ferd finds Elias among the wreckage, and they hold each other tightly. In the end, they're the only survivors of the terrible flight.